Hello everybody, welcome to another review from Experience Kills. My name is Cameron, I'm joined by Ben.
Hello everyone.
Hello Benjamin, welcome back.
Thank you.
Today we are going to be bringing you a review of Vaporum for the console release. Ben, you managed to have a little play of this game as well, didn't you?
Yeah, I was able to get some hands on with Vaporum. It's an interesting beast brought to us by, was it Fatbot Games, I want to say, from Slovakia, is that right?
Correctamundo.
Yeah.
It's been out for a little while on the PC for now, and some of the reviews seem to be quite good for them. They've been doing alright.
Yeah.
To give you a little background, it is a steampunk dungeon crawler, that's what they call it, and it's an RPG with a grid-based system of moving around, turning left and right, and finding all your equipment. The kind of base of the story is that you've been stranded in an ocean and you've found this gigantic tower, and your character has to find out what's happened there, figure out who he is, because he's lost his memory. It's not an existential exercise or anything, and I enjoyed it.
Yeah,
for what it is.
I mean, can I just talk to that setup a little bit?
Of course.
That intro movie, I use the term movie loosely, I mean it's more like some still images with voiceover, I thought was really evocative, and I actually, one of the things that quite impressed me throughout this game was the quality of the voice acting.
Yeah, I picked up on that as well.
Yeah, for a game from Slovakia, possibly the only game I'm aware of that I've ever played from Slovakia, I was really impressed with the obviously the English localization and stuff like that, and the voice acting was really, really good and really, like I said, evocative and puts you in a nice setting and really conveyed a sense of threat and gave me some like Lovecraftian vibes as well, which I thought were quite cool. Yeah, it was cool.
I've always been quite a big fan of a lot of the steampunk kind of setting, you know, kind of like as far as character design goes and things like that. I mean, kind of like when what was it? When Fable kind of went to like the steampunk area of like in number 3, where the industry came about, and then your character could develop with different costumes and stuff. I really liked that.
You like goggles, is what you're saying? You've got a thing for goggles.
Oh god, put anyone in a welder's mask and I'm gone.
Hot stuff.
Hot stuff coming through. It's but like I said, it's a grid-based system as well. So I actually haven't really played a grid-based game for many years.
It certainly takes some getting used to, because this is how certain types of RPG were made predominantly in the 80s and the 90s. Though I'd say more 80s than 90s, and it feels odd in a modern first-person perspective game, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, you can see how they've been inspired by that sort of settings. But I like the way that it has incorporated quite well a lot of the RPG-based, your average things you come across, exploring, loot, character leveling up and things like that. So I think that works quite nicely. It's not like it's not very quick to level up. It does take a while, obviously, to grind through a lot of the enemy characters, and when it comes to combat as well, it can be quite difficult if you get surrounded.
Oh boy, this game is hard, man.
Yeah, I didn't want to say it, but yeah.
It's just a hard game. Like, yeah.
It just is. It just is.
I mean, I tried it on normal, right? And I also tried it on, like, the easiest setting with the most sort of modern doohickeys to make it as sort of like a first-person shooter as possible, so you can sort of make it so movement is a little bit more conventional, though turning is still on the grid, which is definitely the hardest thing to get used to. However, even then, the game is punishingly difficult. I found it on casual, which is like the narrative experience. You can get through the enemies very quickly. They basically do no damage to you, almost nothing at all. However, environmental hazards still mess you up proper good. I got caught in the steam trap, for example, and I just got cooked, and I hadn't saved, and it's like right back to the beginning, because I don't really believe there's much in the way of auto-saving in this game.
I found myself saving after like my first 4 fireballs to the face.
Yeah.
I found myself saving a little bit more often than I normally do.
Yeah.
It's when some of like the automatons, shall we call them, those sort of characters pop up with shotguns as a security system, I sort of go, oh, wow, wish I saved 20 minutes ago.
So something I liked that they clearly took on board the difficulty curve quite seriously, because they introduced this mechanic to do with stopping time. And I thought, this basically turns the game into sort of like a turn-based RPG. So it's all about creating choke points, funneling enemies through smaller kind of gaps so that you can deal with them one-on-one. And I thought that was kind of, it brings a very different feel to the game. And again, it's clearly heavily inspired by those classic role-playing games of many, many years ago, because that's where the turn-based combat really comes from. But it's a hybrid, isn't it? It's this curious hybrid instead.
Yeah, totally. Especially because there is I find a relatively easy way to understand a lot of the things, weapons and obviously the equipment that you wear. Because quite early on you find this kind of armor rig, I guess you call it. What was it called? An exo rig, they call it. So it's an exoskeleton rig. But you have a choice when you start, whether or not you want to go more, tank kind of role, which admittedly is just dangerous to do in this game anyway. But I found it very easy to understand what things are, better for me, which works easier for my build, rather than, just grab this just because it has extra armor. But no, this extra armor actually gives me extra damage for a certain weapon against certain creatures. Yeah,
there's a lot more depth to the game's mechanics than at first you sort of realise from playing the game. There are layers to, like you said, the stats and to the builds, and I think it's quite harsh in a way, because it forces you to choose the exo rig right at the start, and you never get to change it. So you're permanently locked into that on that run. So you might find it's completely unsuitable for the way you want to play, and then you kind of have to restart the whole game. Which is a bit unfortunate, I think. But at the same time, this is a game that, we mentioned it. It's not afraid to be difficult. It definitely has roguelike elements, though I think they're sort of hidden behind the kind of classic RPG mechanics in a way, so you kind of don't notice them as much, because this is just a game from like 30 years ago. In many ways. It looks really nice though, I think. It's got a really good modern visual style from obviously a small developer. They've done a good job of really making the game pop in ways, making that steampunk setting come across nicely. But yeah, man, there's some weird artifices. Like, let's talk about how it feels to just turn around, and the weird look mechanic where you have to interact with objects on that particular screen at that moment. That just feels really clumsy and hokey.
That's the main drawback I was going to say, is that I found as much as, like I said, I'm not a huge amount of experience when it comes to grid-based systems, but when I'm trying to kind of just go up a corridor and turn left, sometimes I found myself completely turned around in the wrong direction. It's just a little overly sensitive for the turning.
Do you know what I think that is? That's not a problem you're going to have playing on PC with a keyboard. Because playing on PC with a keyboard, you tap one, you'll tap the direction arrows or the WASD keys for one square movement, wouldn't you? Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And that would then register that, and you wouldn't overstep, you wouldn't overmove. Whereas on a controller, it's a lot easier to do that.
You think it might be a little... Well, I don't want to say a hiccup just yet, because obviously this is still early days.
It's a translation to controller problem, I think, yeah. I wonder if, I know on some of the consoles now, on PS4 and Xbox, you can plug in a keyboard and mouse, and some games do support it. I wonder if this is one of them, because I think it would be a lot easier to play with a keyboard and mouse than it would be with a controller. Personally, I haven't played the PC version, so it might have its own issues. But yeah, I just find that looking is... Yeah, because you have to try and tap the right stick to turn. But if you overhold it, you'll turn twice. And then all of a sudden you're facing the wrong direction entirely. And so when you're running away from a group of enemies and you're trying to control them and bring them in a certain direction through certain squares, perhaps there's environmental hazards or something like that, you can get really turned around and just murdered.
Yes. So. Brutally murdered by electroshock therapy through the rectum.
I feel like it should auto-save like every room you go into or something. Is that just me? Am I being too mollycoddled, too modern gamer that doesn't like them being too hard? But it's just like you go into a room, and if you can screw up so quickly and get killed so easily that I don't know. Maybe I'm just too easygoing now. I don't know.
No, I think you're absolutely right. I do think there should be at least something. At least something. I'm not saying like every door, but certainly a new area where a new map gets spawned would be handy. Because I mean, quite early on in the game, where obviously the tutorial essentially area is where it's all going through, like push this, push that sort of thing. I think it was about 10-15 minutes in, and there's a sign on the wall that says, "Look out for holes in the ground while doing maintenance work." And guess what? I fell into it.
Did you have to do the whole tutorial again?
You're damn right.
Oh, mate, that's brilliant. I mean, let's be honest, man. If the tutorial, if you're in a tutorialized part of a game and you get killed in that, it means something's a bit off. It means the balance isn't quite right, or the difficulty's maybe too high, or the way in which you're tutorializing the actual environment isn't good enough. I don't think if you're going to have a tutorial in the game, you should be dying in that area. I mean, that's just silly, isn't it? I mean,
well, tell that to Dark Souls.
Yeah, but I mean, it's like Dark Souls wears its punishing difficulty on its sleeve.
Yeah, I know.
I'm not sure Vaporum does that in the same way.
It's just there are certain things that early on. Don't get me wrong. Like if you're gonna fall down a hole and it teaches you to look out for holes, then steady. Hey, come on. That's the sort of thing I would laugh at. You're better than this, Ben. You're better than me.
Hey, look, you got to try and if you're more interested in probing those holes than falling down them. I understand, Cameron. You got distracted. It happens.
Yes. Okay. Fine. Let's go with that.
But no, I mean, there's actually quite a lot to like about this game. I liked the puzzles. I liked the classic feeling of it. I like the setting. I quite like the combat, which becomes this turn-based combat once you discover the time-stopping mechanic. I
found it very easy at certain times when you are dealing one-on-one with an enemy. Just quite literally, you can strafe to the right to miss their attack and then swipe again. So,
or step back.
Yeah, it's quite easy to grasp the combat, and then obviously it does become punishingly difficult once more enemies are included.
Oh yeah, as soon as it's like 3 or more, it becomes this
more
game
of
tactical chess.
You have to know your limits of when to fight, when to fly.
Yeah, and the other thing is you have to learn the enemies because they all behave differently. So it's like, much like a game of chess, there'll be the enemies that can jump and skip squares. There'll be the ones that can attack you from 2 squares away. There'll be the ones that are ranged and can attack you from many more squares than that, if you're in line of sight. So it's all about positioning and tactical combat, which honestly, when I first saw this game and I first saw videos of it, I didn't think that was anything to do with this game at all. And then it's actually a much more kind of intellectual experience than I ever anticipated it being, which I think is a good thing. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, I think this is it's a surprisingly good game. Yeah, that's what it is to me. It's a surprisingly good game. It has a lot of positives on there. Only a few minor negatives. I think that just kind of niggly ones is just the porting over to a console where some of the errors might be coming through. Yeah, but I think that can be easily fixable though, couldn't it?
I think they could just do with like knocking down the sensitivity on the right stick. Like, acknowledging the fact that console gamers are probably gonna push that stick a little longer than they should, which is gonna then throw the rotational thing off. It's just not quite balanced properly, I think, between what you want to do and what it ends up registering. We might just both be really heavy-handed, Cameron. That's possible too.
Well, me and my sausage fingers. Yeah, pretty much. That's probably the problem.
Yeah, it could be. It could be both of us are suffering from that. But no, I think it's cool, and I'm going to put some more time into it.
Yeah. So well done, Fatbot Games. Well done, well done, Slovakia.
Their first game, isn't it? So I think that's quite the achievement. It's got quite high production standards, especially in the visual department and the voice acting as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Once again, I'll mention it was really surprisingly good, and there's a whole bunch of audio logs that are all fully voiced that you find in this game. So. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Absolutely, yeah.
Right.
Oh, well, thank you very much for joining me, Ben.
It's been a pleasure, sir.
As always. Thank you, everybody else, for joining us for a lovely little tete-a-tete with Vaporum. You can get that out on consoles very, very soon. I've been Cameron, and if you want to follow us, you can find us on Twitter at ExperienceKills. You can find Ben at DIYE. You can find me at Camelot on Twitter. However,
Oh.
it is me and my brain, so you may not want to.
Oh, so you have a Twitter that you're now shouting about. Well, I'll make sure I include that.
I've had Twitter for a while, and I thought I might as well just start tweeting stuff.
Awesome. Cool.
But a lot of them are just retweets from like the guy pretending to be the Satan and stuff.
Well, that doesn't surprise me at all, Cameron.
It's funny stuff. I'll always retweet funny stuff.
Funny stuff. Yes. And please like and subscribe on YouTube. And you can obviously get these videos in audio form if you'd rather listen on the bus or whatnot. So you can subscribe to that on Spotify. You can also find it on iTunes, and while you're there, leave us a nice review and a rating. We've got lots of other content, loads of stuff coming at the moment. Even if it's a quiet time for the AAAs, there's always cool indie games like Vaporum coming out. So yeah, keep an eye on the channel for all of that goodness.
Oh yeah. Thanks very much, everybody. Bye bye.
Bye bye.